Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Cool Careers and How You Got Them. I'm your host, Zain Raza, and today I'm lucky to be joined by Mr. Gibbons. Mr. Gibbons, how are you?
Hi, Zane. I'm doing well. It's a good Friday and a busy one at that.
All right. So, why don't you start us off how we always do? What is your official title?
Yeah, my title is co-founder and chief innovation officer at Hempitecture. So I used to be the chief operations officer, the COO. Typically, founders have chief something. And then I kind of changed my function to be more innovation focused, new product focused, new partner, new markets. So pushing towards new creation and innovation in those different directions.
Can you tell us a little bit about Hempitecture? What is it that your company does?
Yeah, that's a logical place to start. So Hempitecture is a manufacturer and distributor of bio-based building materials. So think of insulations, carpet underlayment, rigid wallboard insulation, acoustic sound insulation. We can also make products for other industries like mattress industries, packaging industries, furniture, car parts. But we are predominantly focused on building materials because that's where we see an opportunity to replace conventional, toxic, high embodied carbon materials with bio-based, low embodied carbon materials.
Why is it important, do you think, to make that switch?
Yeah, I think within our lifetime, we will see nearly every industry go to a net zero alternative. I think cars were an obvious example, right? Or even energy, right? We used to burn oil, coal, and natural gas exclusively, and now we're exploring zero emissions, meaning zero carbon emitted to the atmosphere in their creation. So we saw a big move from combustion engine cars to electric vehicles, big move from coal plants and well, we still use a lot of oil, but to renewables like wind, solar, and geothermal and nuclear. And then building materials are something very similar. So they make up a huge quantity of the quantity and volume of the materials that we use. And they're typically derived from minerals or petroleum based resources. And that one has a large impact and often takes a lot of energy to create. So the idea that we could use bio-based alternatives and grow our building materials while simultaneously sequestering carbon from the atmosphere and locking it inside building materials is a logical next step in this big clean energy transition economy.
Yeah, awesome. We're gonna take a little trip back into the past, not too far ago. But when you were a teenager, what were you like?
Okay, well, yeah. So when I was at Delbarton, I went to Delbarton in seventh grade, so I would have been 12, 13 years old, and then went through senior year, left when I was 18. I was probably pretty focused, I would say. I took a lot of hard classes, not AP physics, but I took all APs and was really working on my took the SAT like 4 times, played a lot of different sports, was very into exercise and lifting and getting to be my best physical condition. I ended up walking on to the college lacrosse team, which was a great experience as well. But I would also say I had a pretty rounded out experience. Well, in college, I led some community service trips, but in high school, I remember doing stage crew. I wrote a one act that got performed. So I did digital photography and won an award at Delbarton for I don't know if they still do this, but they give a like $250 prize to a winner of a digital photography contest.
I don't
Uh,
think so.
Mr. Martin used to run it, and I was the first year, and I won the prize, and it was and then Delbarton ended up using that photo in a lot of spaces. So I was very curious and still am. Everything that came across, I would research a lot. I loved economics, I loved history, and so I think I used my high school years pretty well to develop myself and prepare myself for what might come next.
So, as you know, the main purpose of this podcast is to educate other young people about the different career opportunities that there are, because a lot of us don't know what we want to be when we grow up. So, when you were a teenager, did you ever envision the career that you have now?
No, that career didn't exist, and so it would have been a really hard thing to envision. But I think one thing I probably did expect for myself was to take something that had a fair amount of risk and a fair amount of challenge to it, knowing that that's what would keep me motivated and that's what would keep me energized at work. So having an open mind, I thought I worked in finance immediately out of college. I think that we'll talk about that later. So I think I was probably open-minded to the idea of being a business owner or taking some type of entrepreneurship step. But I was a senior right during the financial crisis, and so we were reading about I remember taking Tom Brady's economics class. We were hearing about all of these different financial calamities that were going on, and so that seemed to be where the news was covering. Where I think of someone who would have graduated high school in 2014, 2015, 2016, they were probably hearing more about Google, Amazon, Facebook, and what those companies were doing. So maybe there's more of a tech focus at Dumbarton than there was when I was there, because there's very much a financial focus. And, just by nature of where they're located in the country, there's a lot of people's parents and alumni that work in the financial industry. So I think that's where I was maybe thinking a potential landing could be out of college or something to explore, which I did end up exploring, but I was open-minded as well. I actually also really liked screenwriting and I liked comedy, and I explored that even when I was in college. So, and actually after college. So I was open-minded to all sorts of different careers and knew I would kind of, if I cast a wide net, I could see what stuck and what fit, and then going on that. Whereas I see a lot of kids, which Noah's asking for my advice. I guess you kind of are.
Yeah, we are.
People who are like, I'm going to be a PhD in like medieval English, like history or medieval English poetry or something like that. I'm like, all right, that's a lot of moolah to spend on education to go deep in a subject that to be married to that for the rest of your life. Like at a young age, that's an interesting course to set on. And I think sometimes people think, what can work for college or high school, which is like being super great at wrestling or be super great at the violin or piano or who knows, vocals, doesn't necessarily work great for the real world unless you are going to be that top 1% performer in the Olympics or on Broadway or something like that. But so I think it's actually casting a wide net and seeing where you're pulled and developing a talent stack with different spaces on it, from public speaking to humor to knowledge of history to an understanding of macroeconomics. Like that ultimately is what's going to make a dangerous, in a positive word, person. Dangerous as in like ability to succeed on a lot of different fronts.
Right. Thank you. So you spoke about college a little bit. Where did you go for college?
I went to Princeton University.
And what did you study?
I studied public policy at the Woodrow Wilson School of Public Policy. It's actually now called the School of Public and International Affairs, I believe.
SPIA?
Yes, SPIA. Yeah. Woodrow got the axe.
He did. And you said that you worked in business right out of college, right?
Yeah. So I would say I was a little bit with an absence of knowing exactly what I wanted to do. I kind of opted for what I felt wouldn't set me back. And so I did the investment banking analyst course. I worked at Goldman Sachs. It was a fairly competitive position to get, and I had done an internship summer before there. So I said, okay, this will be a good place to start. Let me at least see how these people think, how they work. I know I'm not writing for Saturday Night Live like I thought I'd want to do, and like I thought my friends would all think was really cool. But I'll be in the city, I'll be making some money, I'll be learning, and then I can pursue those activities on the side and see how I feel about both. And I think I knew pretty quickly when I worked in that seat that, yeah, money's a motivator, but it wasn't I didn't want to make my career about it. And when you're in the business, it's like, I say to people, like, if you're Willy Wonka, like, you got to love chocolate. If you're George Steinbrenner, used to be the GM or the owner of the Yankees, you got to like baseball. If you're, whatever your industry you're in, you really got to care and like about it and even want to research or pursue in your free time. When you're working in finance, you really got to like money and what that could mean for your life. And I actually, as a kid, was very fascinated by money and the concept of, look at all these dollar bills. Who are these people on these dollar bills and coins and currencies in different countries and different shapes and metals they're made out of? Like physical currency, actually, I found a very intriguing topic. And of course, as you're a kid, you see dollar bills being passed around. It's got this allure to it as well. But I knew that I wanted an existence that was kind of more wholesome and more more about the human experience than just the go of New York City, working at jobs that people didn't really like, but they were earning the highest possible dollar per hour that they could, and then jetting out to the Hamptons and just sitting by a pool all day, and then working more to afford that lifestyle. I was like, why don't I find a work lifestyle that kind of brings both together, so I don't feel like every Sunday night I'm walking into the trenches of war that I'm just getting totally worried for. But I also, and I was also taking a look at, okay, who are the people that have been here 10 years longer than me, 15 years longer than me? Would I want their job? Would I want to be where they are? And if the answer is no, then you're not really in the right seat. You got to get somewhere where you're saying, hey, maybe I'm not exactly where I want to be today, but in 5-10 years, that person who I'm working for, I would love to be where they are. And so I think that's the important river to step into.
Did you have any other jobs prior to working at Hempitecture?
Yeah, I did. I had a lot of jobs, even in high school. I was a caddy. I worked at ShopRite, slicing meat and deli, slicing, I'd volunteer for places. I worked on political campaigns briefly. Had internships over the summer, one at the UN, or an NGO at the UN, one in marketing. And then after I left Goldman, I worked at a fintech startup. I was very intrigued by the startups. It just seemed like where every highly motivated person was going and potentially having a lot of success was at these early stage companies and kind of calling their own number and betting on themselves. And I said, I've got no wife, no kids, a whole lot of energy and time. Why don't I go full steam into something? And so I worked at the startup, and it was actually founded by a guy from Pingree. Ended up, after probably 8 months or so, leaving that startup. And then I was like, you know what? All right, what's really missing from me and an early stage company, or what's standing between me and starting a new technology company, is a deep understanding of how software works and everything I've seen. But yeah, and this is kind of typical of new upstarts and people. You kind of see what just flared out the fastest. And so you're almost chasing the tail a little bit, right? By the time the news trickles down to us, it's like if I were to go into like Bitcoin today, it's like, well, okay, Bitcoin today is a lot different than Bitcoin 6 or 7 years ago. But yeah, a lot of people did get rich 6 or 7 years ago. And so I think I was probably entering, like, I'd be curious to see how many unicorn, over $1 billion valuation software companies have been founded since 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And even more directly, I was into iOS apps, so mobile applications, because I saw Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, like all. I was like, oh my gosh, Vine, like everything you could think of was like, oh, now let people be movie directors on their phone, let people be poets on their phone, let people be digital photographers on their phone. Like every single outlet for creativity was just made into an app and created. I was like, okay, I've got all these great app ideas. Let me learn how to build these, launch these, and raise capital for these, and hopefully turn them into working businesses. But like I said, I think I was on the tail end of that kind of moment in time. I was interested in payments on apps, so I did a lot of work with different payment platforms. And so I eventually ran into someone else from Princeton in San Francisco when I learned this iOS app development. And I said, I think it's probably time for me to get back into the workforce. I've probably been building projects for 4 or 5 months. And so I worked for a children's computer company. And this company is called Piper Computers. And the idea was, let's give kids toys that teach them how to be creators and with technology, and how to work with software, how to work with hardware. And so you were taking a little Raspberry Pi computer chip, you were wiring circuitry to it with a breadboard, you're creating like little lights, and then you're programming this stuff. And so it was and you're building the computer kit yourself, made out of wood. And so it was really trying to reorient kids towards technology of like, hey, like, this isn't black box stuff that you can never open up and tinker with yourself. Mm-hmm. This is stuff that you should get hands-on with, view as stuff that could be edited and improvised on and build upon. And being someone myself who was like, oh, programming, like that's a language I'll never understand because I didn't have that in my house growing up, to, oh, actually, this is a language that's probably easier than French. Mm-hmm. And I spent, many years learning French, and I was able to learn software programming and put apps on the App Store in 3-4 months. So it was like, let me help change the mindset. And then I really became interested in like, okay, social entrepreneurship. What are new companies that need to be started in areas that need help. And I had studied education at the Woody Booth School. Education policy was what the topic I honed in on. And so I figured, okay, well, these are the types of computer kits that could go in every school. And it's almost like this self-guided tour through technology that makes kids creators rather than just consumers. And so I worked there, and I really liked that company for 3 years. They actually just recently got sold. And from there, but I saw kind of the direction it was going. I saw the problems we had. We went from 3 people to 20 people. We went from no capital raise to $10 million of funding in our Series B. And so I felt like I got to see the transition, what worked for us, what didn't work for us. And I finally felt like, all right, I've got the chops. It's still that no wife, no kids, can go anywhere, ability to really launch companies. And I wasn't necessarily looking for a new company to launch at the time. I was very happily situated in California. In fact, I was trying to build a tiny house in California that I could live in, because like for the cost that it's taking to live in California, paying rent for a year, you could probably build something that was suitable. I found a beautiful beach town with a little plot of land that would work out great for my needs. I was like, I could live there and own the place and not be paying rent. And I wasn't a very materialistic person at the time, and probably still aren't. Still not. So what I ended up doing was going to a workshop. And I was like, oh, well, if I taught myself how to build software apps, I could definitely teach myself how to build. I see people building houses all over the country, and they have no idea how to do software. It's like one thing must be harder than another. And that was a wrong belief. That was a false belief. Building is intensely difficult. There's huge stakes, we'll call it, or risk, because your software app crashes, no big deal. You can just change some code and reboot. Your roof falls in, you have an issue. And there's a lot of materials there. So I didn't learn building just in one weekend workshop. But what I did learn was about building materials. And this presenter of the workshop talked about hempcrete and hemp-based building materials. And it was the only thing in building that I recognized. I had basically no experience in construction up until this point. Maybe in stage crew at Del Martin, from doing some screw guns to build some stairs and things. But my thought process was, wow, everybody in this audience is so enamored with the ability to grow building materials, make sustainable building materials, and use hemp as part of the building product. And then I have my Del Barton classmate who I knew launched that Kickstarter. I had supported his Kickstarter, and he created that company in Idaho to build a hempcrete structure. He must be one of the most, because the guy giving the presentation, like, he kept getting peppered with questions. He's like, listen, I don't know anything about this building product. Ask these people if you want to learn more. I just put it on one slide because I thought it was interesting. And so I called Maddie, my ex-Del Barton classmate, 09, and said, hey, Maddie, I want to build a tiny house in California. I was still fixated on that tiny house idea. Like, what steps do I need to take? What costs would that be? Would you be able to come and help me build with it? And I'll be labor to help support this. And he's like, we don't really know costs that much. I don't have a lot of data points. We built that first house in Idaho 4 or 5 years ago at that point. But there's a second house I've been working on in Bellingham, Washington, which is like right at the tip of the Pacific Northwest on the border of Canada. It's like we're going back to build a second house there out of hempcrete. So I should know more then. And then I started to do a lot of research on hemp building materials, how it became to be carbon negative, what the status of industrial hemp was in the United States, how there were pilot programs kind of preparing for the legalization of this. And then Maddie came to San Francisco to give a presentation to raise money for this Idaho Wilderness Retreat Center that he built 5 years ago, and I'd helped support on Kickstarter. So I said, okay, let me show up. Let me go to this. And I heard Maddie speak, and I was very inspired. And I viewed Maddie as someone who had a lot of the traits that my current boss at the Children's Computer Company startup was lacking. Basically, an ability to get people to follow him and build consensus and be more of a team leader than just a really smart person in a silo, which is kind of what a lot of San Francisco companies are led by. And I said, okay, well, Maddie's got this great architecture, environmental studies, and he's created this company, Hempitecture, but there's not really any startup know-how or strategy or finance behind it. So maybe if we merge forces, we will become a more stronger team, and we can help launch this company and make building materials, not just for this tiny house in California, but for all of America, make these products available nationwide. Because what I saw in that room was so compelling and moving that I was like, okay, I think there's an appetite for these products across the country. So let's just make it happen. It wasn't as simple as wanting to make it happen and then it happening, but we are pretty much on the other side of that, where we now have a factory that produces these building materials. They're available to people all over the country, and so that vision is coming to life as we speak. And I
Yeah.
also, it's in anticipation of where the industrial hemp industry is moving. I was living in California at the time. I think I saw cannabis go from Schedule 1 substance to being sold legally on my block. And I was like, all right, people are kind of coming around on this plant. And there's kind of a new awakening that is taking place that I think will be a tailwind for this industry.
Mm. Wow. That's great. So obviously I think you have a cool career. But in your opinion, what makes your career unique or different?
Um, hmm. Well, it's hard to say if it's a career, right? This is a project, a company that I'm working on, have been working on for 5 years, may work on for another 25 years. I think that's totally within the realm of possibility, or there may be a different outcome. It's hard to predict, and I stay flexible and open minded because I know there's a lot of routes and doors I'll have to walk through that I don't even know about yet. Um, but I think what makes what we're doing very interesting is the newness of it. And people haven't really heard of it. So our biggest battle is just against people's lack of awareness. So we need to create this tsunami of awareness around architects, builders, homeowners, that, hey, like there's a whole menu of installation options you can make, you can do, you can choose. And I'd say the real problem is, not problem, but difficulty that's worth considering. And every climate and every technology that is part of the climate transition is facing the same thing. So you think about, like, right, you can make a burger out of meat, or you make a burger out of like pea protein or whatever,
Mhm.
Beyond Beef or Impossible Burgers making their burgers out of. They're not like, it's hard to beat that first burger, right? Fiberglass insulation has been produced in the United States for 50 years, 70 years at huge scale. Hemp fiber insulation, very small scale, very recent. So, and we're not necessarily promising an installation that's going to be, I mean, there are ways that we are better than fiberglass, no doubt, from a performance standpoint, but there's other spray foams and minerals. There's a lot of installations out there. So we need to displace someone that's basically very entrenched, and we need to do it for environmental reasons.
Mhm.
There's also health reasons and safety reasons that also play. So you're taking a different angle to a market from the side. Whereas, let's see, one company I see introduce a new technology is like electric vertical takeoff and landing airplanes. Have you ever seen those? They're called eVTOLs. They're not fighting against anything. There's not like a train that can go up in the
Right.
air and take a path to get you there. Like, once they get their technology deployed, they're basically up against, like, who wants it. I mean, yeah, I guess they're kind of fighting against cars and stuff and taxis and Ubers, but those things can't do what that technology can do. So that's something that I really have a more appreciation for now, is like, is your product completely new to market? I want to say, like, let's see, what's a product that we never, like Uber in a way was new to market. There was no way to call a car from your phone and then get taken from point A to point B. So they just had to build a great technology, offer it at a fair price, and then boom, they could be off and running.
Mhm.
But now, we're basically trying to say, it's like, what if someone's trying to say, hey, we're Uber, but it's only going to be electric vehicles, and only use electric vehicles because, they're zero emissions and sustainable and this and that. And, the ride's more comfortable. That's kind of what we are. We're that Uber with electric vehicles going up against something that already exists, like an Uber.
Mhm.
So that's, knowing what you have to take away from and what market share you're going for is important. And but like I said, Beyond Meat's going through the same thing. Electric vehicles versus regular vehicles are going through the same thing. And then, wind farms are going against the same thing against coal plants. Now you do have that tailwind support of, hey, the government wants to see the country as a whole produce less carbon emissions. There's that very huge theory about these atmospheric CO2 emissions are leading to the rising temperatures of climate, and that could have a huge collective action problem for our environment. So that's the world we're living in. But that's the uniqueness of our we're basically reinventing a wheel, but a wheel that we believe is more sustainable.
Yeah, I get that. Can you identify some like key traits that allow you to have success in this project?
Yeah, I can. Incredible devotion, and belief in what you're doing. Not only is that going to help you create traction and progress, but it's going to inspire other people to take this similar route. And then I would also say with that devotion comes plasticity, and being able to say, like, hey, like maybe this doesn't work in this form, but how hard are you going to work to try and shove something down the market's throat versus, hey, okay, let's take this approach. And knowing that give and take is a very complicated balance of for entrepreneurs, because one, they're already betting on something that other people haven't betted on before or don't think is a valid bet. So they need to measure and regulate their own delusional confidence, healthily delusional, with realities and feedback from the market. So I think those are real traits for people to cultivate.
Yeah, okay. Can you take us through a regular day at work?
Sure. It's funny, when we were working earlier, and one example, so we started with this building material called hempcrete, but it's like, it's not concrete, but it's a similar lime mortar with hemp. It's not structural, but it would go inside of people's walls. And we were talking about that. I still think it's a very good product, and it has some success in Europe. But around 1 year, we realized, hey, there's not too much traction. We need to move over to a bio-based installation that's being manufactured in North America. We'll be the US retailer for this installation, basically operate as a trading house, and buy from them in Canada, sell in the US, because people, we're the hemp building guys. We've already established ourselves as that brand. And so that was one example of like being that plastic form shaping. And I tell you that, so when we started this business as a trading house, not knowing what % of our business it would occupy, I took every customer's inquiry, I arranged their freight, I sent them the invoice, I arranged the trucks to have it delivered, I follow up for any customer service issues, like did all probably 4 sections of a customer sale in one. Now we have team members that handle sales, team members that handle logistics, team members that handle the customer service, team members that handle the production of the material. And so now I'm a little bit back playing more maestro, or even what's the tour manager, I would say. Like I've got different people on the team who have their instruments, but what comes up from them on a day-to-day, what their needs are, hey, this customer is really angry, they need to be some financial compensation, their truck didn't show up to deliver the material, or someone saying, hey, I need to know if we have this product in stock yet. Well, that's kind of an easier question they can solve on themselves with the technology we created. And so I'm kind of in the background, like making sure that these people's instruments are at their seats and cleaned and ready to be operated. So that is kind of how I think about my role. And I do a ton of financial admin work. So every bill we have software and kind of subcontractor teams that help us get into our billing system, but I ultimately will hit the pay button on it. So and then I do a lot of compliance work. Like you would not believe how much just hiring someone in a new state, like how much paperwork that creates. So there's a lot of compliance that I have to get involved with. And I think that's probably something I personally would like to change in my job, because I have this unique passion for what we do and knowledge about what we do that's not always best applied towards doing general company corporate maintenance. But that's also probably 5 or 6 jobs that I'm doing across that compliance spectrum, from facility production compliance to like tax abatement compliance and stuff like that. I wouldn't call it abatement, but you get tax compliance.
Yeah.
So it's almost easier if it's held in my head. So as a startup, you're always going to be balancing many different things. I think my business partner not only helps fix and operate some of the machinery that we run, but he also designed the website.
Mhm.
And so, that's two completely different jobs. You think about one person that does website design, one person that does factory machinery maintenance. Like those are two very, very different roles, but they're able to live in both of his head at once, because those are the gaps that we need filling. So a lot of what I do is gap filling. But then there's also things like, all right, well, we have to prepare for our next investment round. We have to talk to our current investors. So all of that motion that lives inside my head as well. So a lot of it is like inbox work and firefighting, where your to-do list is basically your email inbox at any given moment. And then some of it's that big strategic direction. Hey, let's step back. What are our margins on this product? What is our sales growth? What is our reporting mechanisms on our production? So I'm a big data guy. I love seeing the trend of the data. I also think data makes every conversation easier, because if I think, hey, I don't know, if I have a feeling like you're not doing a great job, or I have a feeling like our sales aren't as much as they have been or they could be, like, you
Mhm.
don't want to talk to people with feelings. But if you can say, like, hey, this is what the data seems to be showing, um, then you can present stuff as an impartial, like, hey, this is what we have. And then you show them exactly what that scorecard is to change.
Yeah.
This is what good data would look like. So go work towards getting that good data. So that's how you can kind of take the emotion and the personality. So I actually have this one document I created for 2023 internal goal metrics. Because obviously, you want happy customers, and you want happy employees, and you want an efficient, profitable business. But until you know what metrics you're shooting for, then you're really steering towards, it's like navigating towards a star in the ocean, towards navigating towards like where you think the sun's going to rise.
Mhm.
So you want kind of more concrete places for people to go towards. So you just have to give people really concrete goals that you think that, hey, if we're doing things right, we'll have more page views month over month than we would. We'll have more email opens. We'll have a higher conversion rate on our website. Like all of those metrics that you can measure quickly and efficiently, that would point to a healthy business. You need to be aware of those. They call them KPIs, key performance indicators. There's a whole world around startup metrics and stuff, but it's not overcomplicated. You can imagine what metrics you want to be solving for, and then make the team aware of those, make the team responsible for those, and then see who can deliver on their ask, and who can't.
Yeah, I understand. I know there might not be like a set number, but if you had to estimate, how many hours would you say you work a week?
That's changed a lot. I don't really turn on and off, I would say, and that's just how I've been. I think responsiveness is like a huge corollary between a successful business and a not successful business. But yesterday I took a personal day, and yesterday I took time off and really only responded to a few texts and emails through the day. Um, so that's kind of the flexibility that comes with entrepreneurship. And I'm not someone that hugely judges inputs versus outputs. But I like to put in 12 hours a day. I think that's reasonable. I'm up at 6:30. I take some time. I cold shower. That's kind of a new thing I've started this year. I meditate. I'll read for 5 minutes, and then I hit the gym. But I mean, a lot of this gym stuff, I'm on my phone, kind of reading the emails that came in overnight, thinking about where I want to deploy my energy for that day. Um, and then I will get to my desk. I'll work. I'll cook. Everything. I eat all my meals at home. Working from home because I'm in New York right now, working on some new opportunities here on the East Coast for us. And then my fiance comes home at night, and I try not to have her see me doing too much work. So we can continue to build our lives together and bond, because it's a trade-off, right? It's like, how far do you want to get today? But sometimes going all in to get a little bit further today means you won't be able to go all in to get further this week, or you might start running down a direction because you're lazy. You're not lazy, you're tired and fatigued, that you'll have to undo that work. So you kind of have to know what your maximum work capacity is, but hard work is just the name of the game. There's no getting around that. And so that's certainly an element of the week and day to day.
Are you working remotely or in person?
Yeah, I do work remotely. We have a distributed team, so we're virtual a lot. We've got employees across 5-6 states. I think 5 states would be the right number. So it's yeah, and that has its benefits and drawbacks. Our corporate office is in Ketchum, Idaho. I lived there for four years, so I was certainly in person at that time. But now we've kind of made the move to remote work, and yeah, that's a tricky thing to juggle as well.
Mhm. Kind of a different question. How do you use your free time?
Well, I exercise a lot, which is good. I like to read and stay up to date on the news, which is something I hated doing. I thought paying attention to the news of the day was silly, and I actually think there's two there's two segments to working at a startup. One, you kind of do need to silo yourself in a call it a dark space, but a place with very few distractions. So when I was out in Idaho, I was far away from my family. I was far away from my friends from high school and college, my network, and I was able to go all in with very few distractions. I would go skiing and snowboard for sure and get out in nature, and I think that's a great outlet for getting away from work. But I was able to really, really go all in, and I wouldn't read any news because it's not much to gain when you're trying to build this business. It's going to be a 30-year, 40-year business. What do you gain from reading the news of the day? Now, as we've kind of established that, we've got other people kind of working on these different silos, I can kind of take a step back and pay more attention to what's going on in the world and how it may affect our business. Like, who are the investors that are playing in our space and just close deals? Where is the trend towards ESG going? Like, and catching new announcements and things like that. So there probably is very low ROI to time spent observing current events. I think
Mhm.
that's true for almost everyone. But there's also a happy medium to staying completely oblivious, to being unoblivious.
Yeah. Okay. What comes next in this field for you? What are you trying to do next?
Yeah, so what we need to do at Hempitecture is pretty simple. It comes down to more products. It comes down to more places that we're making those products, and it comes down to more awareness about those products. So, I mean, we do a fair amount of traveling to road shows and events and showcasing what we do. We do a lot of thought around how to bring these new products to market, the testing that needs to take place, dialing in our equipment and our investments in our equipment to make sure we're producing these have the ability to produce these products as we want. And then it also takes a lot of like kind of canvassing, who out there could be a valuable partner, who is out there making installation that sees an opportunity in what we're doing and wants to partner. So there's room to run in this for sure. I look at a lot of different parts of walls, one behind me, some behind you, drywall. That's a huge opportunity. We could put a bio-based filler inside of drywall, and that could be a great next product or future product for us. And so kind of seeing where the opportunity is and position ourselves in a place that we're able to take advantage of it is where hopefully we continue to move.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mr. Gibbons. Before we wrap this up, you've got the ear of many highly ambitious students. Do you have any final words or advice for them?
Um, if you got something that's bringing you down a rabbit hole and something that is you find extremely intriguing and something that might be an opportunity, and especially if it's counterintuitive, right? There's, I think Peter Thiel, Paul Graham, a lot of the people who have mentored startup founders all the time say, you'll lean into that, see where your curiosity will bring you, because curiosity and passion in a single person can go much further than, hey, the boss saying, go research this and come back to me whether or not this is a good investment. When you're working for yourself in that way, and certainly expand the surface area of what you see and are exposed to, because the more you interact with, the more you see come across, the more chances, the more you just fill your perspective and view of the world. You might not even realize all the new perspectives and knowledge you add when you see a lot of new things during the day, but it's filtered in there slowly but surely. And of course, stay humble. Obviously, Double Barton Kids, there's kind of like a peak in confidence, I would say, that goes, when you turn 18, 19, you've probably year after year been getting stronger, been getting better looking, been getting whatever, smarter. You can drive, you can do things, you're adding things. And I think that probably continues to 22, 23. And then you graduate into the real world and you get a serious reality check, which nobody really prepares you for and tells you what that's going to feel like mentally when you go from being a college senior to stepping into the bottom totem pole at a corporate setting. So expect that or manage yourself for that. because you'll have a huge amount of degree of confidence, and you'll be put in an area where you won't feel as confident because everybody else will know things 10 times more than you do and know things 5 times faster, and that can be humbling. So you just take a long-term view of things and strong attitude, and the Barton prepares you quite well, but it doesn't make you perfect and it doesn't make you infallible. So it's important to balance that confidence as well as humility.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Gibbons. Have a great rest of your day.
All right, Zane, you as well too. Have a good weekend.
All right. Thank you